tarnished. You feel married to this, and it's ain't my fault. And just because the road was slippery doesn't mean I'm not
I'm sorry, hold on. Wait a second.
This Jay's right here.
Ah, stupid. Anyway, it gets into there where this person starts threatening like a Operation Woopocalypse, where he talks about how he's going to deliver me justice in this really terrifying video to go forward. So I had this sent to me. I had other people like wearing masks, threatening to come kill me, and you basically have this culture of intimidation that's going forward. From there, it kind of goes into the Law and Order episode that came out, what was it, 3 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago? The most surreal thing that's ever happened in my life is to see like these actors reading actual lines of death threats and intimidation that I've gotten. Like, do you know how weird that is to see a character based on you, like, sexually assaulted and sent out of the industry, like reading your exact death threats? I mean, also seeing the police actually doing something, that was pretty weird. So it's kind of, and this is where it gets into like women's suffering is entertainment. It shouldn't be entertainment. This should be our lives, but it's really strange to me that people just want to hear about this all the time with media. And I think there's good intentions for a lot of it, but it's like we don't even care about women until their lives are on the line. So to bring this back to me being the center of the studio, guys, like, again, I did not get into this field to be a feminist. I started speaking out on feminism because I saw the culture of game dev being impossible for me to do my job. There's a question if I can have a career or not. It affects the kind of coverage I get. Who's not going to cover my game or any of the games featuring women that my studio makes? IGN's not going to cover it. Giant Bomb is not going to cover it. Game Informer doesn't care. They're catering for a very specific kind of consumer. So you have all the mechanisms here that are kind of set up by men for men. So the reason I started speaking on feminism is this is a question whether or not I can have a job here, and women at my studio can have a job. This is important stuff to fight for. So, like, I'm told all the time by gamer gators that, like, you just want to do this for attention. You're doing this for financial reasons. And I want to tell you guys honestly and clearly what it's like to be a woman that's at the center of a media firestorm constantly. So how does it affect sales? One common criticism from gamer gators that I get is Brianna's just doing this to get sales for her game. I will tell you right now, I've lost a ton of money with Gamergate. It has affected my ability to do my job. It has slowed the shipment of my game by months. I lose at least a day or week currently interfacing with law enforcement and dealing with harassment online. I actually had to hire a separate person at my company whose sole job function is to handle harassment and interface with law enforcement, because it was at the point where I just was never, for months, I was doing nothing to do with development at all. Unreal Engine, I hadn't even opened it up the entire time we were working on developing Rev 60 PC. My team is over there just working on that while I'm trying to survive. Our company is essentially leaderless for months on end. So did like being on TV, in the newspaper, all that, how does that affect Rev 60 sales? This is the honest truth of the matter. It's barely affected it. It's barely affected it. Because the mobile experience is the way that it is, on iOS, it's very much a consumer, like a point of sale kind of operation. So when we launched, we were featured by Apple. So you could boot up your phone and go to the App Store, and then Rev 60 was on your opening screen there. We ended up getting, it was, I forget the exact number, it was like such a massive, most of our profit for shipping Rev 60 came from that. And then, like we had a certain median level of revenue coming in, and then after Gamergate come up, it like went up by that much. So it is honestly, in the terms of like development, it's been a trivial amount of money that my studio has made for Rev 60 like being out there. So I gotta say, this is frankly a lie. The truth is, we have a leader that's kind of embroiled in this controversy. Like, I'm happy to be here at your college today talking about this because I'm very passionate about feminism, but I'm not in the studio developing today. You know, I'm coming here, I'm talking to you guys about this because it's important. So, I mean, the honest truth of the matter is this is a huge distraction from my career. This is not helping my career. I'm going to write a book. I actually had just signed a contract with one of the world's biggest literary agents about this. Working in law enforcement sucks. They don't take any of this stuff seriously. They don't give a damn. Individually, they're all very nice people that care. Like, cops are out there, they care. They're putting their life on the line. You know, they could be shot at any time. You know, I have respect for that. And they're good people that care about keeping their communities safe. But the psychological priorities of a beat cop don't really translate to Twitter harassment or death threats online. So what I've repeatedly found, Arlington police are clueless when it comes to this stuff. They've been no help whatsoever. In fact, they've been actively hostile at times when I've invited them to my house to file police reports. You know, I am legally unable to tell you which higher agencies I'm working for or working with on prosecutions, but I can say this, it is a fact that between Zoe, Anita, and I, we've had hundreds and hundreds of death threats, many of which very specific and actionable. This is over a time period of over 2 years. Can you name anyone that's been arrested at this point for any threat they've sent to anyone, any woman at the center of this? Any court case at all? Has anyone been given a ticket that we know about? Has anything happened at all? Nothing. It is an uphill battle. Law enforcement is completely unable to address this. And I can tell you on like the other side of this, we are working behind the scenes to get some accountability here in ways I can't talk about. But, you know, it's been a really big uphill battle. For me personally, my Twitter presence, if you're a software engineer, everyone out here needs to go get a Twitter account yesterday. Your ability to be on Twitter and to make friendships and have relationships is critical to your ability to network and get jobs once you graduate from college. My Twitter is a war zone. You've seen my Twitter. Is my Twitter a war zone?
It's a war zone.
It's a war zone. Constantly, it does not matter what I say. I could do an experiment where I tweeted, I just had salmon for lunch. You know, I swear to you, Gamergaters would be on there attacking me about it. So it's this just constant draining effect on me psychologically. You cannot eat that kind of steady diet of hate and not have it affect you somehow. This is from a Newsweek study where they were looking at, like, is Gamergate actually about ethics in journalism? So here are two dudes. They're actual journalists. So then you have Zoe Quinn, not a journalist. Lee Alexander's a journalist, yeah. Mention Kotaku as a journalistic enterprise, sort of. And, I mean, in the sense that they do primarily blogs. But, you know, there's Anita Sarkeesian, and there's me. So what is Gamergate actually tweeting about and thinking about? You know, it's attacking women that have nothing to do whatsoever with journalism. You know, it's the pretext of Gamergate, I believe in. I do think we have an ethics problem in the game industry. But I think this movement is very clearly, at its core, about harassing feminists. I alluded to this before. Guys, a lot of what I do, I can't talk about publicly. You know, at my heart, I'm more of a, I won't want to say diplomat, but I try to get stuff done behind the scenes. And what I do is I do use this moment to make friendships and connections, to talk to people in a position to get things done. Twitter, I have conversations with Twitter. I've had conversations with Reddit. I've had, you know, conversations with people in media. You know, I've talked to members of government about this, talking about our experiences, kind of talking about what needs to change here. Because the truth is, all four of these institutions are completely failing women right now. So this comes back to our studio. What is our next step? You know, we have a hit game. Where are we going from here? You know, we had our PC release come out on Steam Greenlight. It was a war zone again. We got Steam greenlit in 2 days, which is lightning fast. That's how much support our game had from people that loved it. But you know, it was people attacking it. Like the forums were so overfilled with personal attacks against me. Like we ended up having to shut it down. So, you know, in the midst of doing all of that, like where are we going as a company? So we're working on the venture capital scene. We're going to make a really big play for VR. I want Giant Spacekat to be in on the ground floor, developing narrative-based games, particularly for women or other underrepresented consumers. I think this is not a liberal fantasy. This is a greedy money-making fantasy here. I think there's a lot of money to be made by meeting the need of the consumer that is traditionally ignored. You know, so for us, we are working on growing our studio and taking like the things that we learn, even though we have all these distractions, taking it to the next level. And I think that comes to, was it worth it? And I think it's a hard question to answer. And to kind of answer that, I want to like tell you a little bit about my past and you know where I grew up. When I think I was 7 years old, 6 or 7, my dad ended up graduating from the Navy and he moved back to Mississippi. So I found myself in this culture that was really hard for me to understand. Mississippi, very correctly, was said to be a state sweltering with the heat of oppression by Martin Luther King. So, you know, the events that happened during integration in the 60s are still very strongly reverberating through the South today. Ku Klux Klan members, can you raise your hand if you've ever met a Ku Klux Klan member? Because I've met like 10 or 20 in the course of my life. There you go. You know, this is one very famous civil rights incidents that happened in Mississippi. So you have these 3 people that were basically taken and murdered by law enforcement in Mississippi. So they were trying to register black people to vote in the South, and they were taken and murdered. So you have this culture that, even as I was growing up there in the 80s and 90s, is virulently racist, is terribly homophobic, is very sexist in ways it doesn't want to think about. And all the time as I was growing up, I was just surrounded by this. You know, this is a really famous incident. This is the James Meredith incident. This happened at my school, the University of Mississippi. This building right here is the Lyceum. You can go by the Lyceum today, and so it's where James Meredith, because of civil rights legislation, wanted to go enroll in the University of Mississippi, which is a very, very white racist place. And they actually had to dispatch the National Guard to my school to escort him into the Lyceum to be able to register for classes. From white, angry Southerners like rioting, you can walk by that building today and see bullet holes that they intentionally left there from this specific riot. You know, Mississippi was on fire. And this is 1962. This is when I was there. This is the exact same place today. This is an activity that very famously happens in the Grove. It's called, you know, is tailgating. And this is what it's like there all the time. I could tell you, growing up in this culture, you're surrounded by people, they're enjoying their lives, and they enjoy football, and they like who they are, and they place a lot of identity in who they are. But they don't want to think or talk about racism. They don't want to talk about what happens to black people in Mississippi. This is the culture that I grew up in. And I have to tell you, the entire time I was growing up, it just did not compute with me. I could not stand it. That, like, I didn't understand why everyone was so unwilling to talk about this stuff.